One question I had was, I had the sense that you were writing it in order to pass down to future generations an essential truth, and that this book is a memorial to historical events that should not be forgotten. Did that motivate your writing?
I think it may not have been conscious, but I think probably unconsciously. I have a great deal of love for Italy and my heritage. As I said, my father was born there. My mother's parents were born there, both in the same village. When I go back to that village, I see both sides of my family in the cemetery. It's such a beautiful country, and it was so torn during World War II. There was such a bitter, there was practically a civil war, because we had the Nazis there and the people who were aligned to them, the fascists. And then we had the resistance movement, many of whom were communists. And it would be brother against brother and cousin against cousin. And people really suffered through that whole thing. Because, as I said, the Germans were, the Nazis, I shouldn't say Germans, the Nazis went crazy at the end of the war. They were being forced back north. They had various resistant lines, and they kept moving them farther north. And Hitler's stated was that if an Italian killed a German, 10 civilian Italians would be killed. I mean, but often more than that. So there were massacre after massacres, and there were atrocities and rapes and terrible, terrible things that happened to people, innocent people, who had to suffer through all of this. And I guess and when you go to Italy now, the war is still very much present. It's present in the monuments. It's present in the wayside shrines, in the bunkers that are still on the waysides, and all the memorials that are around. And if you talk to people of a certain age who would remember, the war is still very much part of their lives. And so, yeah, I think I did want to let people know that this happened, and people should know about it.
It's definitely one thing that stays with the reader, is those parts of the book that it's just unforgettable. And I think a lot of people don't realize that what exactly went on in Italy.
Yeah, a number of people have said that. They know that France, has been talked about a lot, but not in Italy. And I don't know why. It may have been because of this. Well, first of all, Mussolini was on the side of the Germans, and all that whole thing, and then finally Italy was on the side of the Allies, and there was a lot of conflict, and political conflict during the whole period.
You've written a sequel and a third book, actually. Could you talk about that?
Well, there is a sequel. It should be out in September. It happens 10 years after the end of the first one. The first one is basically 3 months in 1944, but then there's an epilogue in 1945. And the second book takes place in 1955, so it's 10 years later. And that involves a partisan who is a pretty major character in this book, being haunted by this terrible event that happened, in which his lover was killed, and then relentlessly, obsessively pursuing the Italian collaborator of that event. And that's a story of obsession and guilt and revenge and retribution, and then finally forgiveness, because a lot of things happen at the very end. but it's kind of a different book, because while this one is a story of community, the second book is a story of guilt and forgiveness, I think, basically, as it relates. That's what I tried to do. And I wrote that. I didn't intend to write a sequel to the book when I wrote this one. But these people were still in my head. You know, I could not get rid of them. And I felt, okay, what are they doing now? And so at first I thought of a story involving Rosa, but that didn't work out. And then I thought of this one. So that's why I thought, okay, I'm going to have to write what happened now.
We're almost out of time.
Okay.
One last question. What's your favorite Italian restaurant in Milwaukee?
Well, actually, I do have. There are a lot of good restaurants in Milwaukee. There really are. But my favorite is Sala di Pranzo. Have you heard that? Mm-hmm. It's on the UWM campus at Hampshire and Downer, just off Downer on Hampshire. It's a small restaurant, but it's very, very good. It's got great reviews, and it's wonderful food and wonderful desserts.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today, Paul.
Thank you.
For more information, go to www.thecielobook.com or milwaukeeauthors.com. Thanks for watching, and keep reading.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
It's been fun.
Good.